Good evening, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to another episode of Critique Corner with me, Daniel Parker.
And me, DB Fastbinder, where we ask the important question: will I be able to successfully navigate my too many open browsers without accidentally closing StreamYard?
Yeah. Yeah, that's yes, that would be that would not be a good thing.
No. Um, but
Yeah.
while I boomer my way around here,
All right.
Daniel, tell them who we are and what we do.
Yeah. So if you are returning, welcome back. If you're new here, what we usually do is we do basically a set of reviews. We'll review something new or something new-ish. In this case, this week, something new-ish, and then we do something classic, and then occasionally we'll have something solo that we've been watching during the week that we want to talk about. But for this week, we've got box office. Or we always start off with box office. So
Yeah, give me a second to pull that up.
yeah,
Numbers
and
and share
well,
my screen.
uh, uh, real quick, I'll just say that Deadpool and Wolverine made all the money again.
Yeah. Also, if you're enjoying this riveting content of me stumbling around because I wasn't feeling well a bit before the show,
Yeah,
uh, I'm feeling better now. It was just a passing thing. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe.
indeed, yes.
All right. I don't have a good transition for this, so yeah, like Daniel said, in its second weekend, Deadpool and Wolverine took all the money.
Yes, almost 100 million domestic after a 200 and something million opening weekend.
Yeah, kissing 400 million. And yet Disney stock is still down. I think it's because at least it was down every time I looked this week. Let's find out.
Yeah. Well, they had their earnings report the other day, which wasn't very good, and apparently park attendance is down. So
Right.
at least the domestic parks. So that would be in my neck of the woods, in Disney
Mhm.
World, and then Disneyland in California.
Right. And but I mean, the problem is, of course, is that the movies actually have very little direct influence on their top and bottom line since they live off the parks and merchandise.
Yeah.
Now, this is good for them because it's supplemental income for one thing, which it's crazy to think of a $400 million domestic take in 2 weeks as supplemental, but there,
Yeah,
there,
that's
there you go.
yeah, that's the world we live in.
Yeah. Now and I'm actually going to be seeing the movie this weekend with my father, so I'll have a solo review for us next week.
Yeah, nice.
All right, bringing up in second in its third weekend is Twisters, with a respectable 22.8 million in its third weekend, and it's kissing 200 million domestic. I'm going to predict, but without not having looked in advance, that the international isn't going to be too big. Yeah,
Yeah,
just about 80 million after 3 weeks.
yeah,
That's okay because it's just a very American film.
yeah.
Although production budget 200 million, Universal.
Man, yeah. There's no reason for that movie to be $200 million.
Bad, bad.
Bad, bad, bad. You're not making your money back.
Uh, yeah, I mean they're going to do better than a lot of movies have done this year, but still bad.
Bad, yeah,
If you'd had the $100 million budget I would have expected for this type of thing, you'd be fine. But bad.
yeah.
But at least you're actually from all indications, you're actually a good movie, unlike Trap, the newest movie from M. Night Shyamalan.
Yes. I heard the first 30 minutes are really good, and after that, it's crap.
It doesn't help that the movie is asking you to sympathize with a serial killer, not a serial killer with rules like Dexter, just a outright serial killer.
So yeah, yeah. That doesn't usually play well with the audience.
No, it's kind of like what's going on with The Acolyte, just from all the reviews I've read, where All right, so I remember in this can be a weird literary reference here. You ever heard of the Catholic writer G.K. Chesterton?
Yes.
So yeah, he for those who haven't, he was kind of like I would almost call him like the Christian Oscar Wilde because he was like in similar circles in the early 20th century in England.
Yeah.
Um, and in his book Heretics, he pointed out that the weird thing about modernity is that um, people would openly say that they were heretics, which from his perspective was kind of lunacy because, like, if you think you're right, it's the rest of the world that are heretics, not you.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's like if you think that God is an onion, yeah, my weird example. If you
Yeah.
think God is an onion and all the churches and religions of the world disagree with you, they're the ones in the wrong, not you. So you brand them as the heretic and you're the orthodox.
Yeah.
What the trend I seem to be seeing a lot is like there's moral relativism where it's like, well, who's really the bad guy? And then there's F morality. I want what I want, which sounds exactly what the message of the acolyte was.
Yeah.
In the very deep breakdowns I've heard. And no, we are not reviewing it.
Mhm.
If 1,000 reviews by the end of the year, we'll watch, or not 1,000 reviews, excuse me, 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, we will commit to watching all 8 episodes of The Acolyte.
Yes. Yes.
That is your bounty for those of you in the audience. If you want us to actually watch The Acolyte, and don't just hire a bunch of bots.
Yes.
We'll
Yes.
notice because it's still be too suspicious.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm clipping that, by the way.
That can be a short.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Off of that weird tangent,
Yeah.
Despicable Me and Inside Out 2 round out the top five.
Mm.
And, not unexpected. They're both successful movies, though. I remember there were people predicting in advance that Despicable Me 4 would trounce Inside Out 2. I would have predicted they would be close, but it isn't really shaking out like that. I
Yeah.
think it's because there's so much. I think part of what's helping Deadpool, Wolverine, and Inside Out 2 is that, like, people like Disney more than they don't. It's like it's very
Yeah.
easy to get into our sort of online echo chamber of people who like are pissed off at Disney for ruining various franchises. But Joe on the street doesn't know that or know
Right.
anything about that. He doesn't know that Disney has been stiffing all of the right people who wrote like the Star Wars EU novels and refusing to give them royalties, even though they're continuing to print them and
Yeah.
other shady practices that
Yes.
make me dislike them. But they don't know that this is just like they're just waiting for an actual good Disney movie or two.
Yeah. Yeah. I think. No, I think you're right. Yeah. Even some of the biggest Disney critics that we watch on YouTube, a lot of them will say like they want Disney to get better. They don't hate
Hmm.
Disney. They want it to get better. And they're from what I've heard, they were pleased with Deadpool and Wolverine and Inside Out too. So I mean,
Yep.
yeah,
Well, I'll be able to report it on one of them next week. I
yeah,
never bothered to see Inside Out 1, so I don't think the sequel would speak much to me.
yeah, same here.
Uh, Speaking of a movie that nobody actually wanted to see, Harold
Oh.
and the Purple Crayon.
Yeah, I saw. I've seen a little bit about this, and I'm like, I never heard anything about it, and then I'm seeing news that it's just absolutely bombed, and I'm like, well, it bombed because there was no marketing for it.
It's also kind of a stillborn concept. Actually, I wonder, do you remember a couple last year or the year before the Sony had another kids movie, Lyle Lyle Crocodile?
Yes, yeah.
I wonder, the Purple Crayon, who published that and who published
Oh, wow, wow.
Lyle Crocodile?
Wouldn't surprise me if they were the same publisher.
Because, let's see here. Publication date preceded by.
Yeah, and Harold and the Purple Crayon it stars Zachary Levi, who
Yeah, why does he keep playing man children?
I don't know. First was Shazam, and now this. I don't know.
Okay, so I don't have the okay, so it's Harper Collins these days for Harold and the Purple Crayon. If I go Lyle, Crocodile Book, paperback. I'd forgotten just how cheap kids' books were. The paperback for Lyle is only $6.
Yeah, I
I guess it
remember
isn't that many
them.
pages, but
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember
okay,
them being. I remember when I was a kid seeing them for like $1 or $2.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Clarion Books. So different publishers. So what
Okay.
that tells me is that somebody over at Sony had the idea that um, there weren't enough kids movies that were coming out, so they probably were making a point of going after these well-known kids book properties. Neither
Yeah.
one has worked out for them, unfortunately.
No. Yeah.
Lyle, like as I recall, did decently, but it was like depressed COVID time decently.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I heard about this one is like they kind of stripped away everything that would be interesting because it's like Harold is a grown up, not a child, and they're dealing with a single mom and her kids and her kind of hard scrabble life.
Hmm.
And the porcupine and moose are just humans in this world instead of like a CGI characters or something fun like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like since you can just draw anything you need, it's very hard to build tension because there are no apparent rules to the crayon.
Oh. Well.
Also, from
Yeah.
the film threat review I saw, I don't recall there being a villain, properly speaking.
No. Yeah.
Oh, well,
So that sounds kind of boring.
yeah. Alan Ing, as he put it, was there were a line of kids in front of him, and he thought it was unusual that he could hear everything being said in the movie because the kids were just kind of stone quiet.
Because they're probably just like this.
Yeah.
Uh,
Speaking of A Quiet Place Day One came
no.
in next last weekend. It's 6 weeks out, million for the whole weekend. It's on its way to Paramount Plus or whatnot.
Yes. Yeah. 6 weeks in theaters. Yeah. It'll. Yeah.
$137 million cum is nothing to sneeze at.
No.
Then we got the Firing Squad, which I've not heard of. Oh, okay, that's the. Is this one actually Angel Studios? Because it feels like it's Angel Studios.
Looks like Angel Studios.
Uh, bu- bu- bu-
Faith
bu- bu-
based. Yeah.
Epic
Epic
Studios,
Studios.
VGC. Okay, but it's basically about a group of Christian prisoners in a third world prison,
Okay.
starring Kevin Sorbo.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah. He's been in a few of those. I wonder if that one was. I wonder if that was one of the ones produced by Sean Hannity. Because I
Could
know.
be.
Yeah. Because I know Sorbo has starred in quite a few of those movies that Sean Hannity produced. Yeah. But
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Of Sound of Freedom, this is not.
No.
And then we got Bad Boys Ride or Die continuing to make up for a little bit of that Harold and the Purple Crayon bomb.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm curious, morbidly curious. How much did they spend on this thing?
I heard 40 million.
Okay, you know what? Like they're going to make that back up, putting it up on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I transitioned away too quickly. But speaking of speaking of bombs that were based on beloved properties from the '60s,
Yeah. Yes.
The Man from Uncle.
Man from Uncle. Yeah.
Totally intentional, folks. There's a reason I'm taking there's a reason I'm taking a week off from work
Yeah.
because clearly I've been burning it at both ends a bit too much.
Yeah. That's all right.
So, The Man from Uncle, our new movie of the week, which usually for new movies we go within like the last 2 years, but
We went
I've been
nine.
curious about this one for a bit.
I have been too. Yeah. Because my mom and dad watched the TV show when it was on back in the 60s. Um,
Yeah,
it's
I've heard people tell me that at some key points of the '60s, it was bigger than Bond in America.
It wouldn't surprise. That doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
Although I guess a
Um,
TV show that shows regularly is hard to compare to a movie franchise, even one that spammed out movies as quickly as Bond did.
yeah. Of course, it was the 1960s, and Cold War espionage
Hmm.
stories were all the rage. I mean, you had The Man from Uncle, you had Mission Impossible, you had or James Bond.
Hmm.
That the one with Bill Cosby. Um,
Spies Like Us.
no, not Spies Like Us. I Spy.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, So the Man from Uncle was in there. The uh, the actor who played Ilya Kuryakin in the TV show, David McCallum. Modern audiences will know him as the eccentric medical examiner Ducky from NCIS.
Oh, okay. I don't know him from that, but that
Oh,
sounds
yeah,
pretty familiar.
yeah. Well, NCIS is. I mean, that show's been on for like 25 years or something like that. He
Yeah.
sadly, I think he passed away last year or the year before. He was in his 90s, so he lived a
Yep.
long life.
Had a good run.
Mm.
Um, well, speaking of people who didn't have a good run, let's talk about this unfortunate movie.
Yeah,
This thing came out and well, first off, they dropped it in August and it bombed.
yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
And I remember people who I knew and who I followed on YouTube who watched at the time being kind of startled that what they saw such a good movie was like so ignored.
Yeah. Well, I can't. I don't know what came out right around the same time as this one. But
Where did this come out in relation to Lone Ranger? Well,
uh,
Arnie Hammer's other great
oh,
flop.
great flop. I want to say it came out after Lone Ranger.
Um,
Lone Ranger, I
uh,
want to say was like 2013, 2014.
okay, so this Man from Uncle would have come out like 2013, so 2 years later.
Yeah.
So man, Arnie Hammer just could not catch a break.
No. And yeah, well, he's got other issues, beyond that.
Yeah, there might have been some I as well type accusations that apparently were not actually seen as having enough evidence to prosecute.
Yeah, yeah. And hey, Ninja, good to see you.
And
Yeah,
Ninja,
yeah.
but
But the other thing too with this movie is it was directed by Guy Ritchie, who who's I will say his movies really don't usually do well at the box office. He does. There's some exceptions, like well, he directed the live action Aladdin, which I don't know if that counts.
like that's basically stunt casting to put him in there as the director there.
Yeah,
Um,
but I was curious about this movie because he had also directed the two Sherlock Holmes movies with
right.
Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law, and I thought, and my thought was that, well, he was going to do for The Man from Uncle what he did for Sherlock Holmes.
Mhm.
You know,
He, in fact, did not.
no, well, I,
Okay. I should say, from the perspective, I'm not talking about a quality thing. I'm saying from like a audience reaction perspective.
true, yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, I think it's just because I mean he has a very, of course, he's very much an indie director, and that might kind of play into why some people just don't quite understand like his movies. He does have a very unique visual style that can put
Mhm.
a lot of people off.
Yeah, like, would it be fair to say that this movie in particular is kind of aloof?
It is, yeah. Which you could say that about almost all of his movies, and Ninja points out that he directed the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which was also with Henry Cavill.
And was a bomb. Uh,
Yeah,
we were talking before the show, and like with the whole Warhammer thing seemingly melting down if they can't agree on a script soon. It's like, did Henry Cavill at some point in his 20s like I don't know, walk under a ladder at an Indian burial ground or something? Because the dude is just cursed when it comes to his projects. It
yeah,
really
yeah.
seems.
Did have too many black cats crossed his path. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. uh, but yeah. So I guess we should get into the plot of the movie.
Yeah,
So the movie is basically an origin story for the organization known as Uncle, which is this like counterintelligence spy, organization, similar to the Impossible Mission Force from Mission Impossible. Um,
right. What's unique about this one is that it's kind of a joint U.S. Soviet um, effort,
right. Yeah.
because it's basically like designed to deal with threats that they both don't want to deal or don't want to come to fruition.
Right. And in the case of this movie, bad guys from WW2 getting their hands on a nuke.
And not just the German ones, the Italian ones too, which
Yeah.
is an
Yeah.
interesting twist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah.
what really struck me with this one was just like you kind. It's kind of easy to forget that in the 1960s, it feels like a different era. But if you were living in Germany or Italy, there were there were people all around you who you knew well who had done awful things, even if you didn't know about them.
Yeah, and especially in Italy, they had a really hard time getting through their post-war troubles, and of course Germany, was divided in two with West and East. So you had
Yeah,
that whole thing going for it.
which is actually where our movie begins in East Berlin.
Yes, so we meet Napoleon Solo, who's played by Henry Cavill. He goes into East Germany because he's got to recruit this young woman. I don't. I should have pulled up the
Gabby,
IMDb page. Gabby, who's played by
Alicia Vikander,
Alicia Vikander. Yeah, and if for those of you who probably recognize her name, she played Lara Croft in the Tomb Raider reboot a few years back.
which you know what I've had that on my shelf as a Blu-ray for like gotta be close to 8 years at this point that I picked up on some Black Friday randomly. I need to actually watch it at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, so so Napoleon is in he's getting recruiting Gabby because her father is a nuclear scientist, and he's gone missing and they need her help to find him. And but hot on his trail is a KGB agent named Ilya Kuryakin, who's played by Army Hammer. And I find it really funny that you have a British actor playing an American CIA agent, and then you have an American actor playing a Russian KGB agent.
And a Swede playing a is her character supposed to be Italian?
German, I think.
Okay, that's a little less of a stretch.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wait. Is his name Army Hammer with an M? I've been saying it Arnie Hammer this whole time. I feel like a jerk.
Bart's teacher's name is Krabappel. I've been calling her Crandall. I've been making an idiot of myself.
But so to kind of go into the characters themselves a bit, so Cavill's character Solo is he's not a good dude. He basically got out of the war and he was caught fencing stolen art pieces and other contraband. And they basically said, "Look, you're very good at this job. You can either do it for us or you can go to prison."
Yes, and if that sounds familiar, it should. Sorry, sorry, I didn't mean to plug my own stuff.
Oh, yes.
Jessica.
Right. I didn't make the connection because he doesn't quite have the same shape as
Right.
her.
Yeah, yeah.
I will say Alicia Vikander would have made a good Jessica 10 years before, but
Yeah.
probably I don't know what she looks like these days.
Yeah, I don't either.
But anyway, he is very much so. The way I ended up watching this movie, I think, may have slightly impacted how I absorbed it. Where I basically had so I watched our other movie that's going to be at the end of the show on Sunday. Then I kind of plowed through the first 10 minutes of this, then resumed the next day. I
Uh,
might have lost some of the momentum from Solo, because he's like a suave, cool guy. He's basically American James Bond when you get down,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially appropriate since Cavill was in the running to be the last James Bond instead of Daniel Craig.
Yes. But the producers decided he was too young at the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but and he basically is very. What I'll say is that he kind of comes off. How to put it? How to put it? The best James Bonds, in my opinion, come off as like good natured, which is
Mhm.
which is why I don't really rank Daniel Craig as one of the best James Bonds. But that's neither here nor there.
So you're more like Roger Moore, Pierce Brosnan, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
Roger Moore is the one I've watched the most of recently, and I'd even say that what's his name, the first one,
Connery.
Connery. Thank you. I'd say that Connery even had a lot of good humor to him.
Yeah.
Like the difference is that like those James Bonds will quip a bon mot, and it's like you get the sense that they're in on the gag and that they're just happy to be there and they're enjoying life.
Yeah.
Where Cavill's Solo feels like he's just there to cut people down and prove he's superior.
Yeah, you do get that. I did get that impression from that. Yeah.
It's like I just found him to be very unlikable, unfortunately. Um,
Yeah.
uh, which makes it funny that I can't think of the last American versus Soviet spy thing I saw where I ended up liking the Soviet character more because it's like they kept wanting to crap on Ilya the whole movie, and as a result, it's just like, what are you talking about? Ilya's good at his job. He,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's trying.
Yeah. Like I kind of the way I kind of see them is Solo is more the like the James Bond type, the more suave, debonair, well dressed and well groomed and everything,
Mhm.
and then Ilya is more rough and tumble.
Yes,
Yeah.
and but like they keep doing things to embarrass Ilya. Like
Yeah.
Solo gets away uh, early on and he gets punished. But part of the reason that Solo gets away is that a bunch of German police or East German police officers show up and demand to see his papers at an inconvenient moment.
Yeah.
Or like when they're in Italy together, he's pretending to be a architect, and so Solo's saying, "Hey, there are going to be some guys who come up and
Yeah.
try to frisk you. They're actually there to make sure that you're an architect." Well, a traveling German architect wouldn't be able to fight off a bunch of Italian thugs. So you're gonna have to let them steal your money,
Yeah.
basically. Like, and you could tell that Solo was getting off on the humiliation he was about to put Ilya through.
Oh yeah. 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 There another part when when they're working her with Alicia Vikander. They're working like she has like a transponder that's on a garter under her dress, and like
Mhm.
okay, well, make sure it's to make sure it's turned on, and then there's a little tension between the two of them, and then Solo comes in. All right, everybody, turn on.
Yeah, and like I could see a lot of people enjoying this chemistry between the two of them, where they're just like this rivalry between the two of them. It
Yeah,
just turned me off because it never felt like Ilya ever got his in a real sense.
yeah,
Like in the last fight, he sort of he saved the day in the last fight, so that's probably the closest he got to it. But it felt like Solo was always one step ahead of him. When I wondered at certain points if it would have made the movie better if they had like been more split up.
yeah, yeah. I remember you talking about that when you were watching it. It's like there was almost like this weird rule that they always had to be together at all times.
Right, which they were separated at some points, but it was
Mhm.
like they were chained together at points. Like they basically, yeah. We'll get into the ending in a minute.
Yeah,
So so the overall plot here is that Gabby's father has devised a new method of uranium enrichment that basically lets you make weapons grade fissile material in a fraction of the time.
yeah.
which means that suddenly nuclear weapons go from being the domain of the USSR and the USA to suddenly any Joe Schmo with the ability to buy a little bit of uranium could make some.
Yes, which is definitely not good. Uh,
And I will say, for 1960s Cold War tension, like, height of tension times,
yeah,
that is about the only thing that could realistically make the USA and the USSR form a joint operation like Uncle. So you know what? That actually makes it plausible. Good job.
yeah, yes, yeah, yeah. So so as they're investigating, they're posing as, obviously they're undercover, and the main baddie is, let's see, her name was Victoria, played by Elizabeth Debicki. I think that's how you pronounce her name, Debicki.
Debicki. Yeah.
Vicky. She was in she was in something that I did a solo review on. It was called the Night Manager.
Oh, she was also the Golden Lady in Guardians of the Galaxy too.
Yes, and she played Princess Diana in the last two seasons of The Crown. So
Hmm. Okay. She's apparently Polish and Irish.
she's also very tall. I think she's
Yeah.
like 6'2" or 6'3". Yeah, she was standing over Henry Cavill.
And he is not a small man.
No, he's not. um,
But so I would say we don't necessarily need to go through like all the blow by blows.
yeah.
It's basically they're unraveling the mystery as they go. Um,
Mhm.
some of the uh, One of the more interesting scenes was at one point there's like a boat chase where they're escaping from this facility where they found some more clues.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like where my like, okay, so you either think that this is an amazing, hilarious moment as
Okay.
uh, you know, as Solo kind of wins one over on Ilya, or you're like me and you go, you jerk, because
Yeah.
because okay, so what I will say in Solo's defense, they're in a speedboat zipping away,
Yeah.
and he falls out of the speedboat when they hit a wave, and Ilya doesn't notice, and he's still talking to him like he's there.
Yeah.
So Solo proceeds to swim up, gets onto a dock, gets into a truck that's there, and finds the truck driver's lunch, including a
Yeah.
bottle of wine, and proceeds to enjoy himself. And this was a very striking scene because
Yeah.
uh, it's completely silent because he's turned on the radio and is listening to it, and you see this elaborate boat chase happening from kind of Solo's POV, and it's
Yeah.
totally silent as it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of fits in with Guy Ritchie's style, is that, like, you're just, the sound is not where you're expecting it to be. It's kind of like in the first the Sherlock Holmes movie, the when the explosion at the wharf. You don't hear the explosions going off. You just hear the music in the background, and you're watching Sherlock Holmes trying to run away from the explosion. And I think that's obviously a creative choice on his part,
Mhm.
which you're either gonna like that or you're gonna hate it.
Yeah, and I'm kind of two minds about it because on the one hand, I still remember it days later, where like a lot of movies where there's an elaborate boat chase scene, I completely forget it.
Yeah.
Like, say, I don't remember the boat chase from Indiana Jones 3 especially well, the one in Italy. Um,
Oh
I,
yeah.
I more remember the catacombs underneath with all the skeletons of rats and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Um, so it's like a boat chase itself has to work hard to be especially memorable. But it also, like, at the time, I felt like I was being, how to put it. And this is where it's like I think that this is like my fundamental disconnect with Guy Ritchie's approach in this movie. It's like, oh, what's that? You thought you were getting a boat chase? Nah,
Yeah.
that's boring. Why would you want that? Let me subvert your expectations, to borrow an overly loaded phrase.
Yeah. Or yeah, or another part where they're raiding raiding the facility, and they're showing this like big, they're all storming in, and they're doing this whole like kind of like special ops kind of thing, but you know, but it's sped up. You don't see the whole thing going through it. You know, it's just like, okay, well, I want to watch that. Like, no, you
Yeah.
don't get to watch that.
No, shut up.
Yeah.
You don't get it or deserve it.
Mm.
But and what I'll say is that the last act, I feel like it kind of trips on its face because this isn't my favorite movie by a long shot, but I think the first two acts were pretty on point. Aside from my issues with how the two lead protagonists were being portrayed,
Yeah.
the ending kind of ends on a wet fart. It almost feels like.
Yeah, I will say that is the weakest part of the movie. Yeah, it just it was very it's very anticlimactic. Yeah, it's just like,
Right.
oh, that's how okay, that's how you're ending it. All right.
And I think it's kind of like the thing where the two characters kind of had to be together. Like, we said, like, it's like the weird contractual thing where they have to be with each other at the same time.
Yeah.
Because it's like they first both go to save Alicia's character who's been kidnapped.
Yeah.
Um, and then afterwards, basically Solo gets a solo speech with the bad guy and uses their own weapon to do something. That's
Yes.
as that is as specific as I will get. And what I found myself thinking was, well, Ilya was the one with the relationship with Gabby. What if you had a situation where it's like Solo goes, "Okay, you get the girl, I'll get the bomb,"
Yeah.
and then like intercut between the two scenes? That might have improved things a bit.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Um but again, yeah, there was this weird thing where like they always had to be together at all times. Just yeah.
Yeah. Um, so overall, I would say that I have watched Snatch before and enjoyed myself,
Hmm.
and I think part of why I enjoyed Snatch was that like it was more of a I would say Snatch is more outright comedic.
Yeah.
You want a dag?
Yeah.
You never buy a dag from a gypsy. But just things like that. Right, this was taking itself more seriously,
Mm.
and I will say it has a very unique visual style. Like it's never what you would expect. I think in another life, Guy Ritchie would have been, in addition to being like a movie director, he could have been an amazing comic book artist.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
'Cause,
he definitely has the eye for that. Yeah.
like just some of like imagining some of these shots as panels would have been really avant-garde and impressive.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
So like if the idea of a kind of avant-garde um, action spy thriller sounds good to you, then I say give it a watch.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix right now.
Yes. Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, I think I enjoyed it for the most part. Yeah, except for the ending. But you know, I actually think that yeah, like I kind of wish that like Solo and Ilya had actually like near the end, like a little sooner gotten to be like better friends than they did.
Yeah. Yeah, like everyone's very disconnected from each other. Like as much as Alicia and Ilya kind of have chemistry, it also comes off as very like detached,
Yeah.
even though they do in fact make love. Well, no, making love would imply there was love to make. They have sterile or they have intense intercourse at one point.
Yes.
I kept trying to come up with a word that wouldn't imply feelings.
Yeah. And Ninja says he'll probably give this a watch at some point based on Ungentlemanly Warfare. You know, I kind of want to watch Ungentlemanly Warfare at some point too.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to compare to this one, considering it's another Guy Ritchie movie about spies in a period piece with Henry Cavill along.
Yeah, yeah. Only they got Jack Reacher in that one instead of Army Hammer.
Uh, Well, also, Mr. Hammer, if by some chance your publicist shows you this review, you deserved better in this movie, and I'm sorry I thought your name was Arnie Hammer for 10 years.
Yeah, yeah, yes. Apologies.
Yes. Man. Man, I just learned out that his name wasn't Arnie Hammer. But you know what? This guy wasn't John Halo either. So, that's.
Yeah.
so, so Daniel, you're our long-suffering Disney Plus Disney Plus correspondent, underpaid, in fact, unpaid Disney Plus correspondent. This
Yes.
isn't even on Disney Plus. What possessed you to watch the Halo TV show at this point?
Uh I think it was because was it last week or the week before they announced that the show had been canceled. So I thought, well, okay, and I had heard from the usual people that the show was really bad. Um, but I thought I'd I thought I'd give it a watch just because I don't know. I wanted to see just if it was as bad as everyone was saying it was. And yes, Ninja, I know. Um, it's
I mean, I
it
guess once the bad show that's kind of disgracing a franchise you like is canceled, you aren't actually hurting anything by watching on illegal channels.
That's true. Yeah. um,
You're not encouraging them.
that's true. But to be fair, I only watched the first 3 episodes, so it's not like I didn't brain my damage that much. Um, but yeah, so I'll get into try to get into the overall plot of the first 3 episodes. So the first episode starts off where they're on a planet called I can't remember the name of it. It starts with an M. Um,
Is it
uh,
Marathon?
it's not Marathon. It's
That would have been a cute reference to their original shooter game for Apple.
oh yeah, yeah. I can't remember. It was called like it wasn't Madagascar, but it was something along those lines. Um,
Hmm.
they but it starts off on this
Oh,
planet,
is
and
it New Mombasa?
no, it's not New Mombasa.
Okay.
Um,
I'm a fake Halo fan, so let's just move on.
yeah, yeah. So they're on this planet. It's a heavy water uh, place. That's where they get the UNSC gets their heavy water. But there's a group of rebels that are there that are fighting back against UNSC. And I will say one of the things I noticed a lot from this show is they're definitely borrowing heavily from Starship Troopers in terms of like the way the human government was, or the way they act and the way people view them. Um, although the video games were probably influenced by Starship Troopers as well. But,
Yeah, and the it sounds like they're kind of borrowing a story from they have a novel that they published at the time that was kind of like the backstory to Halo 1. That's in keeping with that too.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, so they have this planet, and there are all these humans there. They hate the UNSC, and then the Covenant show up. 20 Covenant elites show up and attack. They wipe out most of the settlement. Pretty much, well, they wipe out the entire settlement except for one teenage girl named what was her name? Quan Ha. Um, and her father was like the leader of the resistance. Um, and then, but of course, right as the villages, or right as the settlement's getting wiped out, that's when the Spartans show up. You got Master Chief and 3 other Spartans. They take out all the elites, and then they go off to find the Covenant ship. And then, as they're in the Covenant ship, they find this Forerunner artifact, and Master Chief touches it, and he starts having visions. And these are memories of his childhood. So right off the bat, we got Master Chief. We're getting backstory on the Master Chief, which I really don't. I don't think we're really supposed to know anything about his backstory other than he was a.
Well, what it sounds like is they're also pulling from that first novel, like
Okay.
like the first novel of Halo. You kind of get you get a good idea of what he's about. Um, Now let me ask you, like, what are the nature of these flashbacks?
He sees his parents and he sees a dog. uh, and there's some. And so that's at the end of the third episode was that he comes to the conclusion that there's another Forerunner artifact on this the colony planet where he lived with his family that got.
Okay.
I can't remember what happened to it. I can't remember if the Covenant attacked or if it was something else. But yeah, that's the crux of it. And the other thing too is that he as he's oh Ninja says he has a backstory, but he's mostly silent. Yeah, that's another thing too. Is Master Chief talks a lot in this.
And I hear we see his face a lot too.
Yeah, if we see his face, oh yeah, you see his face for like 90% of it, and
Oh,
yeah,
that's way worse than I was hoping.
yeah. And so so as he's taking this kid back, and then of course, then we cut to Reach, and we meet, and then we see Dr. Halsey's there, and we also meet the Keys, so Captain Keys and
Mhm.
Miranda Keys. Now, Captain Keys has been race swapped. I don't have a problem with that. Um, but now I don't know anything about Halo lore. I don't know anything about backstories. I was not aware that Captain Keys and Halsey had a relationship,
I
and that Miranda Keys is Halsey's daughter.
I do not recall if that was the case or not. I don't. It was never. I don't remember it ever coming up in the books that I read back in.
Yeah.
But I also
So
read these like 15 plus years ago. So
okay. Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't aware of that. Yeah. I'm guessing they changed that for the show. And Ninja says, yeah, they broke the number one rule, having he shouldn't have his helmet off. Yeah. It's like Judge Dredd. I mean, he never takes the helmet off.
right, and it's also like why you kind of have to. It's kind of like the Mandalorian, where it's like you have to have an actor who's willing to have his face hidden. When realistically, if this show had been an enormous success, you want this to be a springboard for your career, and the only way for it to be a springboard for your career is for people to know your face. So it's kind
Right.
of a catch-22 with these masked characters who never show themselves. That's
Yeah.
like I understand it from like the actor's perspective why they would balk at that idea.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, it's, you have to keep in within the lore of the, but yeah, but yeah, so Halsey is of course concerned about Master Chief, and then they get the orders that Quan has to be killed because she starts running her mouth about, well, I'm going to tell people that that the Spartans wiped out the village and the settlement, and not these aliens that apparently she didn't know existed. Even though the UNSC have been fighting the Covenant for years, like they didn't know that the Covenant existed. It's like, what?
And she does she know that the Covenant are real, or is she just lying and assuming that? Or is she just assuming that the Spartans wiped them out?
No. She's lying because she's a really bad person. Um,
You know, from what I recall, the novels, yeah, like the UNSC is a lot like the government from Starship Troopers, except that like the government of Starship Troopers has its issues, but it's like at least I feel like in the movie, as much as it was trying to be like a takedown of that type of thing, I feel
yeah,
like the government actually see. So the problem is that the underlying story is shown through, and it's like, oh, you mean that like a human government is presented with an actual threat from a bunch of alien bugs, and humanity has to try to organize to fight them off.
yeah,
And you have people going through like a lot of moments of personal heroism in the course of things. And you thought we weren't going to like this faction? Why?
yeah,
Um, but as opposed to the UNSC is just goddamn evil. Like just
yeah.
like I don't know if they went into this, but for every kid who they selected to become a Spartan, they basically were able to make a flash clone of the kid who replaced them so that their parents wouldn't notice that anything was off. And
Uh,
then that flash clone would like die within 6 months or a year or so. So the they would like steal their kid away, and then the parents would get to experience their kid dying of some sort of incurable, non-obvious disease.
Oh, jeez. Oh man, yeah. Oh boy. Speaking of Flash clone, that actually does come into it as
Okay.
part of the story. And okay, Ninja confirms that yeah, there was no relationship between Keys and Halsey. Um, so, but then so Master Chief decides to disobey those orders, and that's when he takes the helmet off so that she can see his face, and then they fly off, and then they fly off to this mining asteroids thing where a Spartan that John basically let go. He escaped from the training when they were teenagers, and he has his own little mining colony. So that's where John goes. Master Chief goes to dump the kid off and learn more about the artifact, and basically that this he meets this guy who's a little cuckoo, and uh, finds out that the guy was actually a prisoner of the Covenant, and then they let him go. Um, or here he escaped or whatever, and he tells him that basically that this is really this is really bad, and you're whatever, and apparently like uh Master Chief has some weird gift that he can touch Forerunner technology and it makes it work. Um, and
That's based on some nonsense from the 343 games, like where he's like a chosen one type, where he has like Forerunner DNA or something. I forget. It's stupid.
yeah, well, and not just him, but I forgot to mention too. There's also a human girl who has the same thing, and she's living with the Covenant, uh, and she's basically like working with the prophets, and and they're trying to get their hands on the artifact too, and
Hmm.
and then the third episode was in order for Master Chief to come back into the fold so that people can trust him again. uh Halsey uses a flash clone of her, and that she created in case she needed like an organ. Uh, but instead, what they do is they use the brain from the clone and basically like digitize it, and that's Cortana.
Hmm.
And then and I'm sure you remember in the games where like Cortana was basically like on a memory drive, and
Hmm.
he just put it into his helmet. They
Hmm.
implant Cortana directly into Master Chief's brain.
Huh.
Yeah. And that's their way of like keeping control of him. And I will say uh the one good thing they did was they got the voice actors who played Cortana in the games to play her in the show. And they had like another actress doing motion capture for her. But like I said, the end of that episode is where Master Chief figures out that there's another Forerunner artifact on the colony planet where he lived on, and of course the Covenant are after that too, because of the fact that this artifact is part of Halo, can like turn Halo on, or so yeah, that's it, it's incredible. Like there really aren't any action, like aside from that opening action scene in the first episode. There's no action in it at all. It's mainly a lot of talking and a lot of
Talking in
in,
hallways.
talking in hallways, talking in labs, talking on ships, and a lot of the political stuff, and it's I found it to be incredible. Like at least in these first three episodes, just I don't know if it's just the way that they were telling the story or what have you, but I just found it incredibly dull. And it's very slow. It's really slow, which I guess is, I mean, that's kind of a common thing you see with a lot of streaming shows. Is just the pacing is very slow.
Right.
Um,
You wonder what could have been if they just taken that budget and made a movie.
I know, yeah. Oh, or made a show that's more in line with the first video game.
Yeah, like I don't get these people who get these properties and their first instinct is to start changing things.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I don't get it either. And
Because like as I was listening to your description, I was thinking to myself, that is basically like that prequel novel to before the first game.
yeah,
And as I'm listening to it, I'm thinking to myself, so it sounds like it echoes that, and they're taking stuff from that, but they're like needlessly changing things.
yeah, and the problem I have, big problem I have with it is just completely is changing Master Chief. Turning him into kind of like one. I'm trying to think of another character to kind of compare him to. He was kind of like Doom Guy. I mean, basically, and now he's just kind of this like I hate to say, kind of a sad sack.
I think the thing is that Master Chief, if he spoke more, would probably come off like that, just because the dude has gone through a lot.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But like in the games, they were good at using silent acting and like his body language, his gruff little statements to Cortana. Like you knew how important Cortana was to him because she was basically the person he had interacted with the most for a long period of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it sounds like they just kind of dropped the ball repeatedly on this one.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, and Ninja points out Oni is the main source of evil in the UNSC. I think I remember that from ODST. Um,
All right, like their CIA equivalent or KGB
yeah,
equivalent. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, if this was me doing this show, like I probably would have started off with like the Fall of Reach, and then gone to the first game.
Yeah, that would have been a good option. Or if you wanted to like focus it more on Master Chief, just adapt that first novel straightforwardly.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I can see why people didn't like this show, um, and I can understand why it got canceled after 2 seasons.
Now, would you say that you feel like this, like some people said, oh, this show hates Halo. Would you say that's the case, or is it more just like it misses the mark?
I think it just misses the mark. Um, I don't get I think the people who making the show probably weren't big fans of Halo. Much like the people who were working on The Witcher. But
Like,
yeah,
here's a good example, like because I heard people just on there saying like they just hated the source material and wanted to change everything because they hated the source material rather than like being misguided. So
yeah, and I don't know enough about like the making of this series. I don't know the thought processes of the people behind it, what they were, why they made the creative decisions that they did. So I'm going to, willing to give them the benefit of the doubt and that they just didn't know what they were doing. Um, although I will say I have heard some of the comments from the guy who played Master Chief. He didn't do the show any favors. Let's just say.
no, and some of the comments I heard from the creators. Well,
Yeah.
so I guess what you're saying overall is that you're not missing much if you just boot up the Master Chief Collection and play through Halo 1 again.
Right. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. Just play the game. Yeah. Just play the games. Yeah.
You can stop after 3, or no, you
Yeah.
can stop after Reach.
Yeah. Yeah. Stop it. Yeah. Stop after Reach. Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of reaching, I really have absolutely no transition to get to this next review topic. So this is my solo thing, and this will be a quick one. I feel like I've been in a rut the last couple of weeks. In this case, it's because I have a supply of manga that people have given me for Christmas and birthdays, and I'm like more than a year behind on some of them. So I've been making a point of reading through my backlog.
Mm,
This is one that is it's kind of interesting. So it's called Ice Guy and Cool Girl,
mm,
and the actual I read the manga of it. There is an anime available on Crunchyroll, but I was unaware of it. I guess it came out last year. I never heard anybody make reference to it, so I don't know if that's a just was lost in the shuffle or if it's just not a good adaptation.
Yeah.
But this one is so there's been so traditionally the way you get a manga published is, you submit chapters to Weekly Shonen Jump or Shonen Champion or whatever, and if they like the cut of your jib, they ask you to do like a sample story, and you put that out there and you see if people like it, and if they like it, they greenlight you as an ongoing manga, and then you're producing chapters every week or month or whatever the schedule is until they politely say that your popularity has slipped and it's time to end.
Mm.
This was different because when I looked up or I looked at the back of it, apparently this one started off as a series of comics on, I believe, Pixiv or Twitter. I forget which.
Okay.
And the format of it actually kind of fits that because it isn't the traditional Japanese comic strip 4 coma style, but these also like are way too short of. I guess I'll call them stories. Like way too short of episodes to be typical for a traditional thing. So this feels like something where you just have somebody who's actually a pretty good manga artist, just launching these like I want to say they're like 6-page stories on average,
Okay.
and just posting them online. And then they got collected into a edition like this.
Oh. Hmm.
Um, so the actual story is it's a bunch of vignettes, and what I'll say is I don't think this warrants binge reading because it got kind of boring very fast. But if I just read a chapter or two a day, it was more enjoyable.
Okay.
Um, Basically, you have the guy on the right with the white hair. He is the descendant of what they call it a snow spirit, but makes me think it's a Japanese Yuki Onna,
Okay.
aka like a snow woman.
Okay.
And every time he gets stressed out, he produces ice.
Uh,
Or there'll be like a localized snowstorm. And he's working in this office with the woman on the left who she's the cool girl in that she doesn't show a lot of emotion and she's just very stoic about things.
is she like the cute aloof girl?
Yes.
Okay.
Um, and basically it's like pick a topic. She shows up, they discuss the topic. He gets flustered because he's just completely head over heels for her.
Yeah.
Ice happens, coworker comments, rinse and repeat.
Okay.
What I will say is that by the end of the first volume, there has been some progression in the love story. Like nobody's like confessed to each other yet, but it's obvious that they're going that direction.
Yeah.
There also isn't like a ongoing conflict or larger story outside the romance. This is just like a pure romance story.
Okay. Uh,
It's not like, at least as the first volume, which is all I've read, it's not like his mother has shown up and he has to marry a kappa from the next prefecture over. And oh no, what will cool girl do? No, it's nothing
yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's nothing like that. Um, it's just that it's just kind of generically cute. Again, I can't speak to the quality of the anime. I don't know if I would say this is necessarily worth a full purchase. Maybe if like you're at half price books and someone has given up their copies, that would seem about right. I got a totally reasonable amount of entertainment from it.
Okay.
But I'm not. But I maybe if I didn't have a huge backlog of manga and I had things I pre-ordered early in the year, so it's only getting worse when every time I don't attend to it.
Yeah.
I don't know that I necessarily am going to feel like ordering a whole lot more. If I compare it to last week's entry, the evil lieutenant and the magical girl used to be arch enemies. This would rank lower.
Yeah. Okay.
So make of that what you will.
Yeah. 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 I'm looking at the guy. He kind of reminds me of Jack Frost.
I think he looks like kind of like Todoroki from My Hero Academia too.
Oh yeah, he
Just,
does.
just
Yeah.
without like the red half.
Yeah.
Um, that does remind me of a funny story. And so one time I was at a convention and there was somebody. or either there's one person or there are multiple people who show up at the convention in my area and have just an impeccable Jack Frost from that Guardians movie. Uh, and I was walking behind him and trying to get his attention to say that I really liked his costume.
Yeah.
And his friend finally got his attention so I could say it. And I was telling somebody else about that, and he said, if he'd been on his ball, he would have said, "Wait, you can see me?"
Yeah.
But yeah, like again, just mild amusement, romantic fluff. Like if you're a fan of romance, just for its own sake, then this brings it.
Huh. Okay.
And I will say it is one of the more entertaining. Like I end up getting gifted some or excuse me, shoujo manga like this because it isn't always obvious from the art style on the front what the target audience is.
Yeah.
If you're buying gifts for others, um, this is one of the more entertaining ones that has that aim that I've seen for a bit.
Hmm. Okay.
Yep, mild recommend.
Oh, cool.
Speaking of mild recommend, The Secret of My Success,
Yes.
the Michael J. Fox movie that I thought I had never heard of until I saw this movie poster. I said, "Oh yeah, I used to see this at Blockbuster all the time."
Yeah, and I remember seeing it play on like HBO and where other premium movie channels back in the day.
So
Um, yeah.
this might be one of the more '80s movies I've ever seen.
Oh, this is very 80s. It's a very
Painfully '80s.
painfully 80s. Yes, from the music, from the visual style to to
The fashion.
fashion. Yes, everything. Yeah.
So this movie is like maybe one of the bigger successes we've covered on here because like in 1987 this thing brought in 111 million dollars according to Wikipedia
Wow.
on a very small budget, and that is probably almost entirely down to Michael J. Fox being the lead on the tail of Back to the Future.
Oh yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, it wasn't because of Helen Slater, because Supergirl wasn't a big hit.
Oh, that was her.
That was
Okay,
her. Yeah. Yeah.
okay. So the Secret of My Success is a very odd workplace comedy, is the way I'll put it.
Mhm. Well, yeah. Well, you should probably mention why we watched this movie in the first place.
So the algorithm on Netflix can sometimes be very literal with its recommendations.
Yeah.
So we watched the Hudsucker Proxy, and I log in. I'm looking at the movies, and it's like, oh, what's this? You like movies about quirky guys from Middle America who become CEOs or
Yeah.
become executives in New York?
And we're working in the mailroom.
And, yeah, who started in the mailroom?
Yeah.
Like it's almost like funny how similar this movie is to Hudsucker Proxy if you just describe it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But that's where the similarities end, though.
Yeah. So the movie starts off, and it it has a very odd style. Like, or I don't even
It,
want
it,
to say distinctive. It's like,
yeah, I felt like I was watching a John Hughes movie. Because John
yeah,
Hughes, his movies the movies he directed were a lot like that, where you'd have like characters breaking the fourth wall and just the visuals, the visual, like the way he's blocking the shots of everything. Like it reminded me that like I was watching, I'm sitting going, did John Hughes to direct this movie? And then I really looked at it, and he wasn't involved in it at all. It was actually directed by the guy that did Footloose.
right. So that's
Yeah.
that makes it interesting right there. Like the movie starts off, and it almost feels like it has a thesis, but it also doesn't, because it's
Yeah.
like it starts off with his parents who are farmers from Kansas,
Yeah.
um, interviewing like a it's almost like a prelude to things like The Office, where it's like they're interviewing an unseen interviewer.
Yeah. Yeah, they're talking about how they don't like they think it's weird that he wants to that their son Brantley is wants to go off to New York, make it in the big city.
And the dad's like, "Oh, there's nothing in New York you want to see." And the wife goes, "Well, how do you know? You've never been."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so so he heads off to New York, and so part of the reason he does it is because he supposedly already has a job lined up,
Hmm.
and uh, and then he goes in and he sees that everybody's packing up, and then
Yeah,
he talks
the
to the guy,
company
and
got
he's like,
hostile, taken over.
"Yes, yeah, it's a bit like uh, Jordan Belfort in the Wolf of Wall Street. Like his first day as a trader is
Yeah.
Black Monday."
Yep.
So he's in New York, and now he's got a hunt for a job, and he of course before he left, his mom told him about his uncle, uh, although I couldn't figure out how he was his uncle. um,
Yeah. There was a lot of marriage, but like the marriage had dissolved, but he's still kin. Kin is
he,
kin.
kin is kin, yeah, like, oh, okay. And so he's struggling to find a job, and it kills me. One of the job interviews, he's talking to the HR woman, and he's like, "Oh, I'll do anything. I'll be whatever you want me to be. Just just let me get this job." Like, are you? Can you be a minority woman?
Yeah. Yeah. This movie is kind of it's edgy.
It is, yeah.
And what's funny is that the particular edge it has is actually still edgy in 2024.
Yes, yeah. Well, the funniest part of the whole movie, well, I guess I'll save it for like the spoiler section, but it's when he's in the phone booth talking to his mom.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the funniest part of the whole movie, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, definitely one of the best parts.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so yeah, so he gets himself a rat trap apartment. He manages to convince his pseudo uncle to get him a job in the mailroom.
yeah,
And
yeah, and,
on his
yeah,
first day, he runs into Helen Slater's character, Christy, who, man, she is a beautiful woman, and that '80s fashion was doing its best to ruin that.
yes, it
Because
was.
there's good '80s fashion, but this is like the extreme shoulder pads, short, not not good haircut, overdone lipstick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Her underlying beauty shone through despite her fashion choices, not because of them.
right, yes, yeah. Although her fashion choices were probably fit with her character, because she's very like
Right? She's in the executive pool.
yeah, and yeah, she's very no nonsense, and she's of course all of her colleagues are men, so she has to dress
Right.
slightly more masculine.
Yeah. So so one of the better parts of the movie also is when um, Brantley, aka Michael J. Fox, is getting shown around the office. Like,
Yeah,
because like you have a guy who's a minor character, but he's memorable because he's very sarcastic and lazy. Like the the boss thinks it takes 2 hours to do this route. It takes me 30 minutes.
yeah,
And of course, the company is slashing some budgets because they're worried that they're about to get a hostile takeover. And one of the people cut is an executive from part of their usual mail route.
yeah,
And Michael J. Fox basically decides, you know what? And it's actually, I thought, pretty well set up because they establish, hey, as the mail guy, he has access to a lot of private communication, so he knows what's going on at the company.
yeah,
His education actually suited him to this sort of. I don't think they ever exactly say what their product is, but like some sort of manufacturing company with a bunch of transportation hubs that he is obsessed with trying to streamline, or is obsessed with trying to build up, I should say.
yeah. It sounded like they have a lot of eggs in a lot of baskets.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, and so he decides, one day he's in that office that's been cleared out. He picks up the phone and pretends to be the executive and makes some decisions. And his new scheme is to basically pretend to be an executive and e- everyone just goes along with it.
Yeah. Nobody questions it. It's like, well, who are you? Oh, I'm whatever was it, Clayton, I think was his name.
Yeah, whatever his fake name was.
Yeah, like, oh, okay. Yeah,
And,
right.
well, they also made a very big point of establishing just how big the company was. Like, as he put it, as he was reading through these memos that he really shouldn't have been reading. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we have two different fulfillment departments, and neither one knows what the other one's doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think his uncle says they had like 30,000 people working in that office building alone. Yeah.
So, like, for an implausible as heck premise like this, they actually managed to lay the groundwork to like make it so that you could see how somebody could slip through the cracks.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and of course the only thing he has to worry about is that his uncle doesn't see him.
Right, because he met his uncle, and so his uncle knows that he's the guy in the mailroom.
Yeah. And there's also another subplot in there with his aunt.
Yeah, I was just about to get to that.
Yeah.
This movie is kind of uncomfortable in places,
Yeah.
and it's like it's weird. Like I found myself laughing and finding the scene funny, and then I went, "Ha ha!" Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I don't. So like, she's not his aunt by any sort of blood,
Mhm.
but she. So okay, so the CEO, played by Richard Jordan, character named Howard Prescott, has a what amounts to a trophy wife, uh, played by Margaret Whitten, character named Vera. And one day, just because he's mailroom grunt guy, he gets
Yeah.
assigned to drive her home because I guess her service had fallen through or something.
Yeah.
And she's having a breakdown because Howard is having a series of affairs, like, who's the newest bimbo, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. Yeah.
And Michael J. Fox, being Michael J. Fox, is just very kind. You lied to yourself and told yourself you had to be 21 forever. I think you're beautiful.
Yeah.
and
and
so
then
she,
and
and then
yeah,
she proceeds to go all Harvey Weinstein on him
yeah.
in a scene at the pool evoking Jaws.
Yes. And by the way, her finding out that he's his aunt doesn't stop her at all. She's still going after him.
Yeah. Also, this is a horny movie.
Mm, mhm.
Like there's multiple jokes about he meets Christy, the Helen Slayer's character,
Yeah.
basically has a waking wet dream right there.
Yeah.
Um, he ends up in a rat hole apartment where his neighbors like to
Yeah.
make
They're
the
very
musical
vocal.
tubacks very
Yeah.
loudly. And like there's
Yes.
some visual comedy around his um, bed frame and walls shaking all night.
Yeah. He even conducts them like an orchestra.
Yeah. The so and I swear that whoever was directing this had an oral fetish. The way they kept focusing on Christy and Vera's lips in various scenes.
And probably a foot fetish.
Yeah, there's also some foot fetish stuff too.
Yeah. And they played the "Oh Yeah" song from Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, let's take a quick
Nice.
sidebar into the soundtrack.
Yeah.
This was distracting because this is like it's like if you told me, okay, I want you to score a soundtrack of 80s music, but you can't make any interesting choices.
Yeah.
It has to be the most on the nose 80s music possible.
Yes. Did you see who did the music?
I did not know.
David Foster. He's a big music record producer guy.
So it's like he chose his best his album's best or his record label's best stuff or
Probably, yeah. You probably recognize him if you saw him. But yeah, it's yeah. Yeah, the music, yeah. Although I think you mentioned too that the theme song was actually nominated for an Oscar for best song.
no, it wasn't Oscar, it was a Golden Globe.
Oh, Golden Globe. Okay.
But it lost out to Dirty Dancing, which when I finally hit the theme song for the movie, I think it was the last song played over the credits.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, yeah, yeah, no, Time of My Life deserves to win this. This shouldn't have even been in contention in a sane universe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you got a song being sung by one of the Righteous Brothers. Yeah, yeah, no, no, yeah.
Yeah. Um, and I think our yeah, at least the connection that it has with the Man from Uncle is that it kind of fell apart in the third act.
Yeah, it kind of they rushed to the conclusion, and my biggest problem was that there were really no repercussions at all for anything that he did.
Right, because he lied to everybody the whole movie.
Yeah,
Uh, but yeah, what the heck? We're spoiling a 30-year-old comedy movie.
yeah, yeah,
Deal with it. Uh, he, uh, his girlfriend forgives him, like Christy forgives him without there being any problems.
yeah,
He gets everything he wants. It's like you lied and defrauded people.
yeah.
Now, mind you, they were trying to like I remember I looked up some of the reviews on this one, and I believe Roger Ebert believed that Michael J. Fox was horribly miscast. He might have been miscast from the perspective of what the character actually was like, but from the perspective of making you like the character, Michael J. Fox did a lot of legwork to make Brentley a more sympathetic main character.
Yes, he did. Yeah, probably more so than like maybe like Charlie Sheen
Okay,
or
that is so funny that you said that because I was like on a walk this morning. I'm thinking, well, okay, well, if he was miscast, who would I have put in there? And I thought of Charlie Sheen too for the time period.
yeah, it fits. Yeah, or maybe or even Emilio Estevez, his brother. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
like it would have been somebody who. On the other hand, I would say that Michael J. Fox can like portray the sort of like aw shucks, corn-fed Kansas farm boy
hmm
angle. So maybe this is really a story about how the city will pervert you,
yeah, maybe, yeah. Um, but oh, you're still muted.
but like they don't acknowledge that he's been perverted by the city, which is
No,
strange.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, and to go back to like the funniest joke in the movie, when he's in the phone booth talking to his mom, and his mom's like, "Oh, is it really safe? Is it safe there?" He's like, "Oh yeah, it's really safe." And then the bodega right next to him is getting robbed.
Yeah, like shots fired,
Yeah,
police are
police are there.
tackling this guy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. The bullets are flying. He's got to duck down, and the bullets are flying by him. And she's like, "What's that noise?" It's like, "Oh, it's not. It's the TV. I'm watching Miami Vice."
yeah. And what I'll also say about the ending is that they kind of okay. So like I actually like I do a little bit of investment of my own, and I like stories about business, and
Mhm.
I could follow The Wolf of Wall Street very clearly, and I could follow Hudsucker Proxy very clearly. I
Yeah.
feel like this was either too technical or they made crap up for how easily they were able to like redirect a hostile buyout.
They made crap up. I think for the most part. Yeah. 'Cause it happens very quickly. Yeah, and yeah, yeah, that part of it was very unrealistic. Yeah.
Though we did get to see Fred Gwynne as one of the shark Wall Street people,
Yeah.
who people might remember as the judge from My Cousin Vinny, and also as the original Herman Munster.
Yep. Yeah.
So that was nice to see him.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's always a pleasure to see him. Yeah.
But so what I would say with this one is that I think I like it more than I should have, and I think that's because it kind of did its job as a comedy. Where, like, yeah, while there was the grape scene in the pool that was kind of uncomfortable, like I found myself thinking, okay, but what if it had been what if it had been Helen Slater and Richard Jordan in that pool? Would it have still been framed as funny or been funny? Like, well,
Uh.
no.
No. No. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
only funny because it was a cougar going after a younger man, which is a bit of a double standard on my part.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. I think I agree with you on that. Yeah. Um.
But it was still shot in a funny way. And like, there's a lot of this movie where it's like that's kind of out there, and that shouldn't be as funny as it is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's still, but I think I laughed out loud a couple of times, and I liked a lot of the dialogue. It was very snappy and quippy.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Like I would say this is probably like a mediocre example of my flavor of comedy that I enjoy.
Mm.
So it's like, I won't say famously because we aren't famous, but like a few months back, I watched Animal House for the first time and didn't really care for it. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but what this basically was, it was the scenes I liked from Animal House with that one shyster um, taking
Oh.
advantage of like pretending to be the boyfriend of the girl who had died in the kiln explosion. Like,
Yeah. Otter. Yeah.
yeah, it was basically giving Otter a whole movie to just Otter his way through it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, you know what? This is basically the Oops All Otter edition of Animal House.
Yeah.
So that's probably why I enjoyed it.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I thought it was a funny enough comedy. Definitely a nice time capsule of the 1980s, which for a lot of people is a favorite decade of theirs, and I can see why. Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of like the second half of the 80s. I don't think has aged as well, or at least isn't remembered as fondly.
Hmm.
So it's kind of interesting just as like a little historical snapshot of what people thought the pop culture was at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to go rush out to watch it again anytime soon, but I don't regret the choice to review this. So I guess the Netflix algorithm can keep recommending us movies about people from the Midwest who become executives in New York in a period piece,
Yeah. Yeah.
starting in the mailroom.
Yes.
They're, uh, if I had a nickel for every time we've watched that movie, I'd have two nickels, which isn't a
Goals.
lot, but it's
Yeah.
weird that it happened twice.
Yeah.
To
Uh,
quote the meme.
yes. Well, yeah. I think we've said all we need to say. Yeah,
Yep.
well,
And that brings us to the end of our program.
yes, indeed. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it as always. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're almost at 100 subscribers. So,
Mhm.
who wants to be a hero and be the 100th?
Yes. Come on, do it.
Yeah.
Subscribe or die.
Yes. Yeah. Ring the bell. For notifications. All that good stuff. And we'll see you next week. Bye,
Yep.
everybody.
Later, guys.